Well, folks, Gen Z is here. The first ones they're halfway through college already. So what do you need to know about a generation who doesn't really remember life without smartphones, and they even have the option of taking an Uber to high school? They want things to be simple and transparent. That's what you need to know about them. One area the student housing industry has struggled to make simple and transparent has been utility management. That's why Simple Bills was created. 10 years ago, two Baylor students who were frustrated at splitting up bills with roommates, they created a company that solved that frustration and launched Simple Bills. Soon after that, they realized not only could they help roommates and their college buddies out, but they also realized they could help student housing managers with this process as well and give them back more time to focus on their residents and give them better data to easily recognize potential savings. If you are a student housing manager and you are not providing a simple and transparent process for your resident utility management, you will not serve Gen Z well. And it will show up in your online reputation, which will ultimately be paid for in your marketing expenses. If this is you, contact Simple Bills today at www.simplebills.com. Welcome to the Student Housing Insight Podcast, where we're putting you in touch with the people who bring student housing to life. I'm your host, Wesley Dees, and joining me today are co-hosts Lincoln Ogata and Greta Dare.
Hello.
How you doing, Wes?
Doing great. How are you guys?
Doing fantastic. Happy to be on here and get to talk more about what I love, student housing.
Well, hey, we're at the recording of this. I think we're what's the day? July 12th. We've got other podcasts that are ready to be released, but I wanted to jump this one ahead of those just because of the timing of it, and because we're literally within the last couple of weeks before move out, and I felt like everybody kind of needed some type of encouragement, some type of reminder of just how to, finish things off for this academic cycle, this leasing season. And it's always one of those things where you start getting focused so much on, what's happening with the new year. You're already thinking about, having to start the renewal process again. And, it's one of those things where it's just this constant cycle. And I think in order to, and certainly things that I've learned over the year is it's going to be a lot easier to start stronger in the next season if you finish strong this season. And so that's the title of this episode, and it's really just kind of reminding everybody, or if you're new to student housing or to a management position within student housing, it's really about just kind of informing them on, hey, here are some things that you need to be thinking about, because if you don't think about it, it's going to end up causing problems down the road. So I've got a fantastic lineup that I interviewed with. Most of the guys were from the supply side, be it the property management systems and utilities and that type of thing, that are going to give some great tips to everybody on things that they should be thinking about in order to make sure that it doesn't cause problems for them later. But before I jumped into that, I really wanted to have both of you guys on, because, all three of us have been on the site level side in operations during this time, and from, very different angles. And it's something that I wanted to talk with you guys specifically on, what are the type of things that we need to be thinking about from a facility side, from a leasing side, and from an overall operations side in order to again, finish strong. So guys, with that being said, what's some of the frustrations that you guys have had during your experience in student housing, specifically on site, where you got to the other side of move out and maybe even the other side of move in, and you were like, oh shit, I forgot to do that. Or, oh shit, I could have done this. Any examples that you guys have?
I'm going to go ahead and start first, if that's cool. So for me, it's about cohesiveness on the site level. And that was one of the biggest issues that I think that a lot of us run into on the site level. Wes, you and I have kind of talked about this in the past at different points, right? Where you see an on-site team that some of them where the property at the site level is potentially very, very far behind in leasing, and you're in the middle of focusing on turn, or even if there are still just a couple of leases to gain, and you have this kind of thought process that seems to happen in some people's minds where, and this is from the top down. So now it's turn is happening. We're going to focus on turn. Turn is what matters. Turn is all that matters. And it's, like I said, it starts from the top and it works its way down. And it wasn't something that you and I dealt with when, you and I worked together, because we were on the same level of these two things have a shared level of equal importance. They're both major parts of the business. They're both equal parts of the business.
And to be fair to everybody, when you and I were complimenting each other in that, it wasn't, you and I weren't on site together.
Well, no.
The struggles on site, when you're talking about, even between, it's not even a property manager and a facilities manager. It could be between the property manager and the leasing manager, right?
However, even when you and I worked together, those things still existed. That's
absolutely.
Yeah. And so that's the thing, is that this message is for everyone. This isn't just for the on-site team. This isn't for the regional managers. This isn't for, the people who were senior managers, directors, VPs above. Everybody has to be on that same level of cohesive mindset that every single area of the business is just as important as every other area of the business at all times, including turn. And we have a really bad habit of forgetting that. So when you're at a site and that site is behind a leasing or only has a couple more leases to go, and turn kicks into high gear. And if you have somebody on site, whomever...
Let's be honest. Even those that are 100% lease, you're still trying to build a waiting list, because there are people that are not going to show up. So for anybody,
I'm glad you brought that up. Yes.
For anybody that says, "Oh, we're leased up, we can focus completely on turn," you can focus more on. I don't want to say focus more. You can have a clear focus on turn, because I don't think you're going to be riddled with as much traffic and that type of thing. But man, someone wants to come in and lease and they're fine with going on the waiting list. There needs to be a lot of attention put on that person, because it may not even work out for this year for that person to live there, but he can start leasing for next year with that person. So.
And Wes, I was going to say real quick too, again, this isn't my exact area here, but I have done this before, obviously. We always put the emphasis on move-in day is such a good marketing tool that can happen not only for that year, but for future years. When you come and help your friend move in somewhere because you're excited, or it's your older sister and she's going in and you're going to be in college the next year or something, really making the move-in an experience. A lot of signage out in front. It's not really about once they get on site to getting in, but based on where your location is in your town, there could be a lot of parents driving by and seeing, wow, that place is having fun on move-in. And that can be such a great tool for just kickstarting your next year's turn. Again, if you don't have vacancies at that time of the year, definitely for the renewal, and definitely putting in their mind, oh wait, that place is an awesome place to move in. Or if they help, that's why turn's so important, to go in there and go to a shining room that smells great and looks great. It's just so much marketing that can happen during the move-in process.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And
Absolutely.
I'll spend a little bit more time on that later, but we interrupted you, Greta, because you were about to go into your second point there.
No, that all plays a part into it for sure. But really what it is that it's making sure that you aren't spending that there's nobody on the team that's saying that every single focus, every single team member, every single person is only focused on turn. And we all have that kind of mentality where this is the most difficult part of the season. This is the most difficult part of the year. Everybody needs to be, it's all hands on deck. Everybody's going to be a part of this. Everybody's going to be working here till 9:00 at night. Everybody's going to be a part of cleaning, dusting, doing all of this stuff. And that's great. And you're right. And we all are going to be doing that. But you don't get to forget the whole other key area of the business that makes the business successful. And you're right, Wes, even if you are 100% leased, because you are going to have no-shows. Like, I would love to hear from the one property that's never had no-shows. I'm sure it exists. I would just like to honestly hear from it. So Really, it's about everybody being on the same page, making sure you are not that person, and getting everyone, from the top down to making sure everybody is cohesively agreeing that everything in the entire business matters. And that comes down to, the thought process, the encouragement, and then the scheduling and the on-site support. And then from there, it goes down to, all right, do we have enough team members? And then how are we going to schedule them out? Who are the best team members to focus on leasing and marketing from there? So during the entirety of turn, what are the events that we need to be a part of? Who are the team members that don't need to be walking units, that don't need to be a part of the actual turn process during these specific hours? You need to be working with your on-site facilities manager, whomever it is that's a part of that. You need to be looking at your team members that aren't necessarily needing to be a part of that turn process, that can man the office or can man the phones, are making those last minute phone calls, are available to close on tours, or do need to go out and be on campus or be a part of any of the on-campus marketing or any of those items. And you do need to be making those schedules just as you would during any other part of the year. And yes, it's stressful. And yes, it sucks. We all know that. Everybody on this call has been there. We have all been a part of it. But it will be over, and it is ultimately for the best, and it does lead to your success, and it is necessary, and it is crucial. So ultimately, everybody has to be cohesive. Everybody has to recognize that all of these parts are essential. You do need to pick the best team members, pull them away from the turn process, look at those areas and say, how does the scheduling need to work? Who needs to be a part of the sales process in the office and the phone calls? And then how do they need to go out and market if that is a process? And if you do need tips, again, on the marketing process during the summer, we do have a podcast for that. Go back and listen to it. And there are additional tips on the SHI community, SHI or studenthousinginsight.com, member login, sign up, and all of those things will help. So that was kind of where it was at, because I think those were the biggest issues that I dealt with when it came to being on site during term, was really just people being like, no, this is all about turn. That's all we're focusing on. And it's like, it's not though.
Yeah, no, exactly. And especially if you're in one of those late markets where, there's some that you and I were even scratching our heads of, how is this person getting this many leases during turn? And
how is this even happening? What are you people doing?
And it's just, there are some of those markets, especially your tier 2 markets, where a lot of people end up making that decision to go to that university at the last minute. And literally August is like the biggest month for them.
So weird.
So yeah, and in that situation, we even knew it was coming, and because we experienced before. But it is so incredibly difficult to
plan and manage.
And it takes, if you're a regional manager or above, and you know that about one of your properties, you better put some additional resources on that property, because just to focus on leasing, because if you don't, not only are you going to miss out on capturing those leases, but on top of that, you're going to have a very disgruntled team that is just, it's tough, and they need the support. So
yeah.
And if I can speak to that too, the thing I always like to give my experiences on there. When I used to, run the actual turns, I would call all hands for trash out time, that first 24-hour period or whatnot it was. And then I would usually leave alone my AGM, the leasing manager, and let them pick somebody or whatnot during that time. And then I wouldn't call all hands again until Sparkle teams come out, day before moving or so. But I do want to speak to the owners in this. And, here I'm on my pedestal talking to owners. Just a recommendation, if you will. If you're worried about spending a little extra money to get some temporary labor to where you're already trained, already market-ready marketers are having to do turn work, please spend the money, get some temporary labor to help them out so that those individuals are there, so you have a properly manned marketing team in office during this time. So again, myself, I'm guilty of stealing them all for trash out and stealing them all for Sparkle time. But in between there, just don't count on all your on-site people. These are people you've already trained. They already know. You can't put it like this. You can't get temporary help for marketing, but you can get it for flipping furniture and cleaning out rooms. So that's all I'll say on that part.
You know what? No, Lincoln, I'm really glad that you brought
I'm just going to really quick. If anybody needs a definition of sparkles, just it's Lincoln at easyturn.net and it'll give you a full explanation.
It's so funny though, because my very first student housing turn, it was such a different experience for me because I went through a couple of them after that. And my very first one, we had temp workers. We had people that were hired just specifically for that purpose. And it was because, I was a specialist. I was there for the purpose of assisting with the leasing and marketing. Technically, I was there just for the marketing. We've covered this before. I didn't help with leasing. However, I was there for that purpose. So I wasn't there during turn. I was at 2 different properties during their turn process. And these people can attest to this. I didn't help with turn at these properties. That's not what I was there for. I'm not here to help you with turn. And it wasn't because I wasn't willing. Wes, you know this. Like, I am not afraid to clean. This is not an issue for me. I will fix, I will clean, I will trash. I don't care. I will get dirty. I'm here to get dirty.
You'll move furniture too.
Yeah, I will move furniture late into the night. I don't care. So it wasn't about that. It's that I was sent here with this purpose because you're behind in leasing and this is what you need me here for. And so again, this is what I'm talking about is this property knew that when you have people or when you have this need at your property, take the people and allocate your resources properly. So if you have great leasing team members, if you have marketing specialists or whatever the case may be, send those resources out and utilize them effectively. And then, bring in some temp staff for whatever amount that you can get them for and have them move your furniture, have them clean your apartments or have them come do the trash outs and, keep those other 2 people to do other things and have them help sparkle. Have those temp workers. And if you need extra assistance on actual move-in day, because we had temp workers for move-in day as well, bring those in. It was the weirdest thing to me as I kind of moved forward in my career that we didn't use temp workers at all. It was very, and it wasn't worked into the budget. It wasn't a part of the budget. It was so interesting because I was like, these move-in days don't go quite as efficiently. These move-ins, these turns, these final days don't go quite as well as that first one did with, I will only say her first name, but I do love her dearly, with Cindy. And she, it was the most beautiful move-in day I experienced in my entire life. And the whole process was gorgeous. Oh. I know. No offense to anybody else, but I'll never look at a Starbucks drink different, the same again because of her.
Well, anything else that you guys want to mention from previous experiences on, things that you've learned that you want to share with everybody?
Not to blend it with the tips part that I'm guessing I'll be getting into next, but a really simple thing is just to try to remember, especially if you're at the manager level or something, some of your workers might go throughout the year. That's another thing too, I guess, since I'm being real ADD about this. You're also going to have a lot of new employees that come in during this time. That's just the way student housing works when you get your student worker. So it really is important too that you can set a good example for them during this time and teach them what's going on. And if they can survive turn, they're good for the rest of the year on there. But no, just about having really, really good way of documenting the issues you run into, because I've already been at properties where somehow we completely forget something that bit us the year before, and all of a sudden we're experiencing the exact same issue again. And it made me think about that, Greta, when you were talking about manning and stuff. We've had stuff where we're like, well, who's in the office? And we're like, no one's in the office. Is it office hours? Did you put a sign up? But just definitely, that's such a generic statement, but it really is true. Anything that really kind of rocks your world or throws you for a curveball, take time, write it down, put it somewhere so you don't forget it the next year and run right back into it.
That's a great point.
So anything else, Lincoln, it sounded like you had some specific bullet points you might want to get into that is probably a little bit more facility specific. Anything there you want to run through just to remind people of? Yeah,
so I kind of got some direction and some outline of some areas to bring up some tips for. And one of mine was chargebacks, which can be such a painful thing. And I make this, maybe it's a joke, maybe it's not. No one's had the heart to tell me yet. But the whole deal where everyone's mom's a lawyer on a board somewhere and just dealing with all the issues with chargeback. And I'll tell you one thing, if you're not organized with your chargebacks, then it's really easy to poke holes in your case. It's just like going in front of a judge every single time. Every time you have someone who is going to go and combat a charge that you gave them. So I always tell people this, and I've been at I've worked at properties that were managed by a variety of people, and I've seen people who are pretty laid back about this area and some that have some very, very clear direction on it. But as far as chargebacks go, I always say make sure to send out a very easy to read, easy to understand chargeback sheet. about 2 weeks before move out, and maybe even one more before you lose your summer people at the end of the year, because some of those people aren't coming back. Or only going to come back once or twice, but having a good sheet to go out there. And what I mean by that is I've been at some that have almost ridiculous chargeback sheets in the way that they do things. They'll say, bigger than a quarter. That's all the ones you hear. That's fine. Bigger than a quarter, we're going to charge this. But I've seen ones where it says like 0 to 5 holes is this much. 6 to 10 holes is this much. And a lot of things that can be left up to interpretation. And so I say just be very, very clear. And also just encourage people to try to make it as simple as possible. If you have a damaged wall that's going to take us time to dry, I would say kills mud and paint, then, try to make more generic charges and just make it clear. If you make it clear, I tell everyone it's important to be on that thin line between scare and educate. You want to scare them because you want them to do it, and it makes less work for turn, obviously. But you also want to educate them to try to make them not feel like they've been bamboozled by your company because, oh man, they tricked me. Look at this charge list I have. I thought I left a pretty good apartment. Well, there should be no confusion there. If you put out a really, really good charge sheet, you're clear on what you're going to do, then it's so important. And when I say scare versus educate, you don't want to go just send out all these threatening letters. We don't care. Here's a copy of last year's worst one. We charge this guy $1,800. None of that stuff is necessary. And I've seen people do things like move out bingo, which I used to hate, but I'm coming around to. Just trying to have some kind of event around there close to the end of the year, have them answer some questions, give away a $100 item, $200 item. Who cares? You're going to probably save that in people going in and trying to do some of their own thing.
I just learned something new. Move out bingo.
Yeah, move out bingo. It's like trivia about what things you're going to get charged for and what things are fine, and they'll have everyone come down, and it's like an event, and you give away something. And
I gamify the education.
I like that. Yeah. I like that they should do that with leases too, because one of my biggest pet peeves is the fact that you have these people who have no idea what's actually fully in their lease, and I feel like part of that is a little bit our responsibility to go over with them.
Yeah, because I was about to stop you and say they're not just people who don't. This is the thing that's different about student housing than anything else. And this is why if you as an operator are not thinking about these things and putting things in place and taking on the responsibility of the fact that you're trying to suit a client base that is stepping away from their incubator from the past 18 years and or 20 years. And if you're not comfortable with having to, plan these things, and I'm sure move out bingo actually costs a little bit of money. And so if you're freaking out about, if you're an asset manager or something like that, and you're freaking out about the fact that you got to educate students on, or renters on what to do at move out, this is why student housing is different. So,
anyway. That's the thing. That's what I'm going to say is that if you go through, this isn't specific to student housing. You go through the Google reviews or apartment reviews for any apartment community anywhere. I don't care if it's student housing, senior housing, conventional housing.
Yeah, exactly.
It's because people have no idea what their community policies are or what their lease requirements are. I've been going through this for the last 11 years with every single person I know, where they're like, Greta, are they allowed to do this to me? Yeah, they are. It was in your lease. You just didn't read it. And when I was a leasing consultant, a leasing manager, and a community manager, I had a spiel where I went through every single one of the key items on their lease so that I knew every single item that potentially affected my residents that came up as the most common issues. I made sure that they heard and understood in that period of time as we were signing it. And do you know how many issues that avoided with my residents? That was conventional.
Yeah, and so the unique thing, of course, he's saying, I guess, with student is that we can do I guess you could do things like bingo, and I don't know what kind of draw food has at every multifamily. I don't think I would have gone out for too much of it, but we do have kind of a cool way that we can be interpersonal with them, and we can actually do things through events and stuff versus emails that they read and throw away. So I do think it's utilized that we can again, offer food and educate. And it's just as much worth to do that than anything else with an event. So it's just big to let them understand. And I remember watching this and they're like, all right, now what's the rule with this? And then, here it is to fill in that one. Like the bingo squares were like pictures of damages. And then he would read off the description and you would cover up which one they were describing. It's how that one worked. But you have seen it done with Jeopardy as well, too. But just so everyone just kind of has a good general idea of it. Another thing I'm going to touch on real quick was I was also at a property that actually said, no more holes in our walls, period. They went to 3M everything. Bold move. It actually worked out okay. But the major issue was people did not know how to take off a command strip. So we as a team went and put together, and I'm not going to say what it's called. I think it was a random number that we made private so no one's watching my video. But we put out a video on how to remove command strips as well as doing a demonstration. I still remember it now. You do your left hand at the top of it. You pinch it with your right hand and you drag your knuckle along the wall and pull it down and pop it off. And everyone would say it's impossible to do. You can't do this. Mine's been on there too long. We had ones that we had left up for, a year or so just to go up there and show how they can be removed. So anything like that your team can throw together in a matter of minutes and attach it as a video and just make it a link on your group text to your community. They'll click on it. And we actually had quite a few views because, again, people were just clicking on it because there it is. I guess I watched this video that has to do with my specific site. And so any kind of thing like that, it really does save money on the back end. So that's all I'll say about as far as educating your people and being clear, because being clear is so big. And again, these people will try to poke holes in your story and say, either how come I didn't know that wasn't there last year, or this could have happened from here. How do I know your paint's not cheap? I've heard everything. I've heard people say, you guys have cheap paint. That's why we have an issue with this wall. We have cheap paint. So, you have a hole in the wall. It doesn't make sense. But educating them and making it simple. It really is a combination of those two, because we don't want all the questions. We don't need all the questions. And it's really easy too when you do your chargebacks. This is a $10 one. This is $25. You're missing this. This is $50. So minimize how many line items you have and maybe group some of those together and just make it real simple and clear. And the best case scenario is they take care of most of their issues before you even see them.
Yeah. And I would even say as you go through that process and you're like, oh, okay, we got to send out a group chat and, let everybody understand what we're talking about. And I would just say make sure that there's more than a mental note at that point. Have a process in place of capturing, those, I don't want to call them ideas, because in most cases you're taking action on it, but you want to be able to remember it for next year, right? Because no matter what kind of policies and procedures your company gave you in regards to your property, every property is a little bit different. And so there may be something that, during the process of moving out, like what you just mentioned, where you need to make everybody aware as far as your residents, that's now something that you need to, that in future years, you need to be making them aware of much earlier than, the week of move out. So definitely have a process in place of capturing those ideas, those thoughts that your staff has on, hey, this is something we should have done. This is how we can make things better. So, anyway, that's my 2 cents on that. Anything else, guys, before we get to the interview?
Yeah, no, I was going to do one more thing about the about turn vendor, since I got asked about that. Yeah. I'll go into turn vendor. So as far as invoicing for turn vendors and kind of that whole process there, it's some of the stuff is repetitive about being clear and whatnot, but definitely be clear about expectations. Be clear again about what their charges are and what you're being charged for. I've been at sites where I didn't take the time to find out what would happen if we had an on-the-fly drywall repair or something, or for cleaners, what if happens if we open up a fridge and there are maggots inside? Am I going to feel guilty about that, or do I just cross my arms and say, that's part of it? This is it. You bid out the room. It's not the room I showed you, but that's it. That's the set thing. So again, being clear about what your add-ons are going to be and finding out what those charges are. They're much better to have put down when they're just dying to get you to accept their bid than it is to have them negotiate with you where you really don't have a fallback during turn time. They could charge you, $150 for a giant drywall repair. If your guys are so busy you can't do it, then you got to pay whatever they say. So being clear about the expectation, having it down there. Another thing I'll say is, and I talk about this because of my other job that I won't get into now, but I've seen invoices that are so ridiculous. I've had handwritten invoices. I've had to create my own invoices before. All it ends up being is a large row of either 4-digit or 3-digit numbers that exist somewhere. So I will say, if you're doing this on your own for turn, definitely try to give them an example too of even before it kicks off. This is the way we like to have our invoices because this is the way we process them. Whatever it is, double space them, put them in numerical. Something as easy as putting in numerical order. It's so easy to look for doubles. That's something that I had to show somebody one time, that you can actually throw it on Excel and put it in order and then go ahead and take it back off and put it in an email and send it to me. Sure, if you're going to email me an invoice and it's going to just have a generic list of the rooms and the numbers at the bottom, at least put them in numerical order for me to help weed out duplicates or whatnot. But I think if you set and paint the picture, give an example, they want to do, and this again sounds like it's so high and mighty of the properties, but they want the work. I think everyone understands that. So if you give them the parameters and just show them how you want them to deliver that to you, how often you want them to invoice, most companies have that in place, whether it be daily or twice during the term period. But create that, have that. They can use an example, and it'll make your life easier because you can literally dictate what you're going to see if you tell them that's how you want it on the front end. And again, set out the parameters, and then I'll do one of my last little tip things I always talk about. But as far as the vendors go, I always say, if you happen to have a fully vacant unit before turn starts, and it's a broken record to those who've heard me, but I just swear and live by it, bring all your vendors in and have them do a sample run through your property. They're going to see what your expectation level is. They're going to see how long it takes them, which benefits them to see how many they can do in a day. They're going to find out, how it works. And sure, you might be thinking, what if they bail based on it? Well, then they were going to bail anyways. So it's better to let them see what it is. And sure, they're probably going to bring their best guys, so don't necessarily set it to what you see there. But it's just such a great opportunity. And hey, they might not even charge you, which I've had ones where they didn't charge me before. But go ahead and find a room that you have vacant, something in the middle, maybe, whatnot. You can throw them a scary one if you want to. Have them work, see how they work together, see how they get in and out of it. Again, that's a great time to go over and get those questions when it's not actual turn time. And you can take your time, look at it, and walk people through what you're going to be looking for, what you're going to be hitting on.
Yeah, I love throwing. Of course, by the release of this, it's probably going to be a little too late to do some of that. But I love throwing them a really scary one because all of a sudden they have this look in their eyes like, maybe I should rebid this. They start kind of asking those questions of, so I know our bid. No, that's you. No. This is it. So anyway.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's get into this interview that I had with this group of folks that are. It was great having them all together because there was some kind of going back and forth because they were from four different supply sides of the industry. It's funny how even when they start talking about it that you begin to really see how connected everything is, especially when we've got Josh Renberg from Entrata on here, and I think everybody kind of went back and said, okay, how does this end up affecting what needs to be done in the property management system, and how the property management system can take off some of this burden automatically. So it was really cool kind of getting that perspective as well. So let's go ahead and hit play, and then we'll have some announcements in the outro. Well, guys, welcome to the podcast. Thanks so much for taking some time to join me today and talking about how to finish the year strong. As the academic and the leasing cycle comes to a close for the 2018-19 year, we wanted to review operational and marketing tasks that often get ignored during the move out and the turn process that will ultimately end up causing more work later and, more importantly, lost opportunity. So I've put together kind of an all-star cast of characters joining in for this episode that are going to cover everything from property management systems and utilities and bad debt recovery, as well as reaching out to incoming international students. So with that being said, let me introduce these characters. We've got Josh Renberg with Entrata. How are you doing, Josh?
Good.
And we've got Steve Carter with Carter Young.
Hey, Wes.
And JoAnn Orrell with Unilodgers.
Hey, guys.
So, Josh, let's start with you because the PM application, regardless of which platform it is, if it's Entrata or the other ones that will rename nameless since you're on the on the podcast today. It's an integral part of finishing the year strong and to begin the new year even stronger. And I travel across the country, and heck, I can even say I travel around the world now, touring student housing communities. And I'm still amazed at the number of paper checklists, the forms that everyone still uses throughout the year, but especially for move out and move in. And don't get me wrong, paper is good, but paperless is better. And I'm glad to see paper so that there was at least some thought of what a process needs to be. But honestly, if you can go paperless and ignore all those, or get away from all those piles of paper forms and checklists and everything that happen around the move-in period, and especially the move-out period, and you're able to capture all that stuff digitally right off the mark, I think it's so much better. And Entrata made a huge leap forward with the industry and allowing property managers to pretty much go paperless on so many things. Yet again, going back to these property tours that I'm constantly going on, people and companies just don't seem to have really adopted the technology as well as I feel like they should have. Can you give the audience some insight on what they're really leaving on the table, so to speak, by not embracing paperless functionality in their PM systems?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. You've got to go paperless and really leverage your property management software. So if you have paperless or spreadsheets, get rid of them if you can. Reach out to your corporate team, work with them to get the functionality turned on and set up in your system so you can actually leverage it. And to your point about checklists, we see that digital checklists are not nearly as utilized during move out as they are in move in, which virtually everyone's using on the move in side. So on the move out, they can be as simple as tracking which keys were returned and collecting a forwarding address, or as detailed as you need them to be to stay organized.
Well, and
the nice part.
One quick thing on that. I mean, Josh, you've spent, what I love about talking to you in regards to technology and with Entrata is, you've spent time on the ground, like you understand it. I mean, that's one of the main reasons, I think Entrata wanted you to be part of their team, was because you had that experience. From your standpoint, why is it, you mentioned move out, it's less used versus move in. Is there, in your opinion, is there any reason behind that?
I think because it's simple, right? You're just accepting keys. But kind of the important thing is, if you're not even using the checklists, do the process move out in real time. So when they turn in the keys, go ahead and go in your software and process that move out in real time. That's really going to keep your system up to date. So when you're doing your reporting and knowing your occupancy and everything, that really keeps everything up to date and in sync. So definitely on the move-in side, there's a lot of moving parts. Getting prepared. The move out, again, it can just be simple as which keys they returned and the forwarding address. And the nice part about the forwarding address is the residents can actually go into the resident portal and update that for you. So you're not having to transpose that over and have any accidental errors.
Great.
I'll just re-emphasize the real-time move out. You can still use bulk tools when it makes sense, like bulk modus vacate. But there's so many things that benefit from it. Having accurate, up-to-date occupancy numbers minimizes those mistakes, and really it eliminates all that catch-up work. There's so much to do during this time of the year. So the more you can do when you're in the moment and not have to remember to go back and do it, the better, in my opinion. So definitely do those move outs in real time.
Yeah, bulk functionality is, when you're, quite honestly, if the property management system companies out there did not put that function, in their platform, then it would be very hard for them to ever go after a student housing client, because that bulk functionality is key. And as an industry, we were all begging for it. And when we got it, I think a lot of folks were hesitant to do it because they were so used to doing, and a lot of it was because they were still doing a lot of things in paper that would not lend itself well to pushing that, that bulk move out button. Right.
Right.
And so it is one of those things that if you're staying within the system and you're doing everything within the system, it's going to give you so much more confidence when you go to hit that bulk functionality button.
Yeah.
So,
I still have nightmares of those boxes full of leasing files in the assistant manager's office, just waiting to be processed.
Well, use that as motivation to just keep making the Entrata product better. So
Absolutely.
Well, hey, speaking of making the product better, I understand you've got some guys and gals back in the development kitchen that have been putting something together for move-in day this year. Do you care to share a little bit?
Yeah, so working really, really hard to push an updated move-in board, a really nice new interface. You'll still have access to the old one as well as the new one, but we're trying to get that out to all student clients, regardless of what release track you're on. So keep an eye out for that. Hopefully we can deliver on that.
Well, great. Well, hey, moving on over to the financial side of operations and end of the year strong. Steve, your group is the group that handles the revenue recovery that we're just not able to get once a resident moves out. And, I've worked with you for years. You guys are great at doing it. And what's been great in just my relationship with you is the type of care that you that you go through with your clients on explaining to the site level, how to basically keep this from or to finish the year strong with collections. But, no matter how great collections are throughout the rest of the year, we can collect rent every single month. Here at Move Out, there's just so many chances for damages and charges for that, as well as last month's rent that ends up not being collected before someone moves out. And, if we're not collecting it within, and I say we, if the operator is not collecting it within, the first 30 days to maybe 120 days with some people, it ends up going over to a recovery firm for bad debt. Can you walk us through a little bit of what you're looking for, what your firm's looking for that sometimes doesn't come over the way that it should and ends up delaying that process even more before you guys are able to start the collection process?
Hey, you bet, Wes, you bet. Today's consumer suffers from what I like to call convenient amnesia, meaning they never know why they owe the bill, or they're quick to blame the property. Hey, that three-legged table was like that when I moved in, or that pizza from March, that was there when I moved in. That's not mine. So as you can imagine, from our perspective, we hear it all. And as a collection provider, we're an information-driven business. And the challenges of serving an industry like student housing that has such progressive upward mobility, our challenges are really twofold. One is that missing key person's firsthand knowledge.
Yeah, because someone, yeah, I mean, like you said, it's there's a lot of upward mobility. So, that property manager or even assistant manager that was, assessing those charges, by the time you're getting it, 30 to 120 days later, that person could have very easily been promoted. If it's within the organization, that probably is helpful. But a lot of times that's outside of the organization, or sometimes by the time someone gets through turn, they just leave the industry. So I could understand that being a challenge.
Exactly. They go on the witness protection program. But so you're exactly right. You took my next line there, Wes, is that the dynamics of the industry dictates that a key manager is going to transfer to another property. We see that happen so much, or they're promoted and move on to another organization. But the two challenges is that firsthand key knowledge that person carries with them, and also that of file integrity. The result is their successor or the collection vendor is held hostage to the resident, and in many cases, their attorney. Attorneys are like parking meters nowadays. They're everywhere. In many cases, we're held hostage to their biased narration. Mm-hmm. Because in the file, there are no detailed notes. The digital pictures don't clearly depict the condition of the unit at move out, or there's not an executed move out inspection on file, or it's not, or the other key documents aren't scanned in. So we scramble to, try to salvage the account.
Well, and let me go back over here to Josh for a second, and because so much of, back in my day, it was, God, I'm really going to age myself. When when we switched from taking the Polaroid instant pictures to, document things to, we were able to, you remember the Sony cameras that had the CD or the DVD that you could insert into it and take pictures with that. I mean, you could typically maybe you get 40 pictures a CD on it. And that's what we are using. But so many of the, as far as other applications, I know with Entrata as well, of using that move out inspection form, you're able to attach photography to it. Just kind of interested in the two of you guys in this. Now that so much stuff has kind of moved to paperless in that process, is it easier to? I guess my question is now that so many groups are going to paperless, are you guys, and Josh, I kind of like to have your input on it as well. Are you seeing that process and the files that you're getting? Do you see that being more complete now?
Yeah, I think every year more and more technology is getting adopted during the turn process. One of those being an inspection software component where you can take a picture, which is attached to a charge, and if that's an outstanding balance when the resident moves out, then that appears on the move out statement. And all of that is easily electronically delivered to any of the collection providers through our system. So,
yeah, Steve, are you seeing a lot of files that are now coming over that be it using something that Entrata integrates with, or
oh, absolutely, it is so much better now that is available. That functionality, the properties are doing a better job, indicating with the whiteboard that this is the unit number, that these are the pictures that are associated with this unit. Some of the pictures we see, we'll have 20 pictures and we'll have maybe 2 or 3 that we could really use. Some are kind of crooked sideways and doesn't really, it's a brown wall, but you can't make out the, what the damage or cleaning factor is. So the composition could be an area to improve and have better pictures.
Well, hey, I know you were kind of moving to your second point about documentation, and let me just park that there for 1 second, because I want to come back to the whole thing with personnel, because we stated a problem, but I don't know that we necessarily gave a solution. I think part of the solution of the fact that there's not going to be the same staff there 30 to 120 days after move in or after move out. So a lot of that actually does back into having, complete and accurate documentation. But do you have any suggestions for companies that, obviously recognize that, there's going to be staff issues? And I mean, regardless of, what's inherent with the industry, with being promoted and that type of thing, you never know when someone's going to get hit by a bus on their way into work, right? And I hate to sound grim like that, but there needs to be a process in place so that firms like yourself have got somebody that they're able to communicate with that has working knowledge of what's happened to these specific accounts. Any suggestions on maybe things you've seen other companies do or that you suggest to companies to handle that?
Absolutely. The constant theme from the management companies that we communicate with is NOI is king. And for us, file integrity is the key denominator to strong cash flow for the property. I can show you a property in a saturated market. It could be a C property, it could be an A property, and they outperform because they do a great job in gathering information. I encourage my clients to think like private detectives,
which you are one.
Drill down and find out the circumstances and why this resident moved out early, and document it. Document that they were informed of what those obligations would be. A lot of times, Wes, we hear that they said I could move out and I didn't know any money or other circumstances. When that key manager documents factual information, it memorializes the facts. Archive any incrementing, I can't say that word, email communications from either the resident or the guarantor. Obtain forwarding address, contact information, or job changes. a lot of times this information is given to the on-site team. It's just not documented. And that is just invaluable information. And what it does, it eliminates the collection vendor from having to chase rabbit trails.
And I think a lot of the problems, and Josh, I'm going to lean on you here again, because I don't even know if Entrata offers this functionality, but there's during the move out process, and that's kind of the time when a lot of this information is being told to the staff. They're not in front of their computer. They may not even be in front of an iPad or something that they can get access to put those resident notes in the system. Does Entrata have the functionality yet? And if not, I'm going to ask you to fast forward this on the on the fast track.
Put on your list of wish list items.
Yeah. But as far as everybody's got their phone with them, right? Is there a way that Entrata allows for the gathering of that information so that it could be entered straight in the phone versus, at the very least, hopefully someone is, instructing their staff, hey, you're going to get a lot of information. It ultimately needs to get back into Entrata, pull out your notes app and keep a running list and, follow up with it each afternoon. But is there something that Entrata currently offers that can capture that from their phone?
So you can absolutely access Entrata from any device, any browser. On an iPhone, when you're trying to get to the resident account, it's not going to be as optimized to a mobile screen, but you can certainly get in there, can do notes. The best means and method is going to be on an iPad through Site Tablet, where you can pull up that resident record, add the notes, attach any photos, as well any documents too.
All right. Well, I've got my first request in because you're right. There's definitely... don't get me wrong. It's a lot better than what I've seen from other providers and even what you guys started out with as far as how visually appropriate it is for an iPhone screen. I don't know if that has more to do with what you guys have been working on or the fact that the screens have gotten larger. I don't know, but yeah, would love to have something like that where you could put in resident notes and it feel like a native app almost. So guys, you heard it here first on the Student Housing Insight podcast. If you ever get that functionality, you've got me to thank for it. All right, Steve, any other thoughts and recommendations for folks on ending the year strong?
Just take your cash serious. Maintain good contact with the resident at move out. And again, just make sure your documentation is in order. Make every reasonable effort to try to collect it in-house and, just determine what the point of diminishing returns in and get it to your collection provider as early as possible. I would also encourage, a lot of times the resident or guarantor will reach out to the property post-placement. And I would encourage the property to forward any of those leads onto their collection provider so they can redirect their efforts. And if there's accelerated rent, if that's a factor, to certainly let that agent know of the revised balance.
Great, thanks. So, JoAnn, thanks for waiting patiently as we've kind of gone through all these operational things, and now want to talk a little bit more about marketing and the leasing side of things. But you're in the business of helping international students find housing in the U.S., which has amazed me in my experience. How many international students literally show up stateside with zero accommodation set up, obviously because they didn't check with Unilodgers.com before they left their home country, or maybe they did and there were not any properties listed for the university that they're going to, which I know I've said this several times over the past year, because Unilodgers is one of our Fab Five groups for this year on doing some interesting things within the space. And, if you're an operator out there and you have not put your property on the Unilodgers platform, you are missing leases or at least missing getting your property in front of more international students. So, but, again, I think there's a lot of students that, or international students that see that there's not anything listed on Unilodgers.com, and you end up, that person ends up just saying, screw it, I'll stay in a hotel for a week or so and try to find housing once I actually get there. And, there's a lot of property managers and leasing managers that are listening to this right now saying, well, geez, how do I get in front of those people? Obviously listing on unilodgers.com, not to make this a huge advertisement for Unilodgers, but what other advice do you have for those listeners on, how to make their property highly visible and attractive to international students? And I don't mean just the tangible part of the property, but the soft parts of it too, like the staff and how they're welcoming people and, other outreach type things that they can be doing. What's your advice for those people?
Well, I would say, Wes, first, thanks for having me. And I say, maybe we save the best for last. But when it comes to international students and accessing them, you really have to use, I think, every resource that you can. They operate on a referral basis for the most part, and they are most likely to pick a place to live if they know someone they know has some sort of connection to that property from past experience. The same goes for working with Unilodgers or even some of our competitors out there where they've had a good experience. And so they share that, and then you tell somebody and they tell somebody, and then they end up at your marketing source looking for housing options. The other thing that I would say about, online marketers and, not only Unilodgers, but again, all the other ones out there, we all kind of have, I would say, specialties as far as, the students that we reach. So use every resource that you can. In most cases, it's based on a success fee model, kind of going back to what you were saying before, where you're not paying anything until you actually get a signed lease. So it is free marketing. And the other thing that I always tell people is think about, when you go to book a hotel, for example, and you go to hotels.com or you go to booking.com, and you might go there to look at all the options that are out there, but then you might go directly back through the site to actually, book your hotel, or in this case, lease your apartment. So there's huge benefit just in that, where these companies out there like Unilodgers and the rest of us are working on your behalf all the time and in the background. So you really need to make use of that and look at every option that's out there, and don't hold back, because in my opinion, and I think a lot of operators would agree, a filled apartment that you pay a small fee on is a lot better than an empty apartment that sits open for 12 months and zero rent. So, that's the first thing that I would put out there. The other is, I think a lot of people
if you can hold on to that for just 1 second, because I want to speak to it on the technology side, and to be completely transparent, Unilodgers is a client of my other company, Providential Student Housing, and I've been working with them for the past year on introducing their brand to the U.S. through as they're going through their U.S. expansion this year. And so I want to be completely, transparent about that. But at the same time, I want to kind of address some of the things that I've heard, as you guys have been going through that expansion of people really trying to understand the platform, and immediately, well, why would I want to list? Because let's face it, ILSs, as far as the apartments.com and Apartment Guide, love those guys, but for the amount of money that we pay to list the properties there, we don't, in the student housing industry, for the most part. Now, this isn't typical in every single market, but we just don't get the ROI on it that the conventional operators typically get. So from that standpoint, when you're talking about a listing service like Unilodgers, one, it being fee based, or success fee based, so that you're only paying for leases that you're getting. And I know specifically with Unilodgers, it's based on it's based on that person actually moving in, not just signing a lease, but that person actually moving in before anything's actually paid. But the other thing that I hear quite a bit is, Well, if they're just Googling, and I think about it, and as a student from China or India, and they're able to get on the computer and just Google, student housing in Gainesville, Florida. To go back to one of the things that you said, their property may come up. There's some things that Unilodgers is able to do from an SEO standpoint that no individual property or portfolio is ever going to be able to obtain in relationship to ranking. And I know that because I've seen it in the UK and Australia. And, once it really, takes hold in the US, it's going to be the same way. And so from that standpoint, you got to understand what's coming down the line with that. The other thing in relationship to that, when you're talking about international students, they go and do that Google, and they find, some type of, listen to me talk like an old man. They do that Google. They go through, they do the Google search, the Bing search, whatever. And, they've got a massive, when you think about University of Florida and the number of properties that are in Gainesville that are student specific, it's very overwhelming. And when you're talking about, a platform like Unilodgers, to go back to what you talked about earlier in regards to referrals, the Unilodgers website is kind of built with that referral, at least from a review standpoint, so that referral process is kind of built in. And, that same kid in China or India are seeing other kids from their same hometown in those countries saying, hey, this is where I stayed, had a great experience, blah, blah, blah. It's just a different experience than having to search through, Google listings of properties. So anyway, just wanted to make that quick comment.
Yeah, and just kind of to tag on that real quick, we Unilodgers are marketing experts, from a couple different perspectives. We're experts at marketing to international students. We're experts at the online and Google marketing aspects. So use our resources. Our budget again goes way beyond probably what any individual product put into it, and we're catering to and pulling into that international student base where we're able to communicate with them in real time. And we've heard a lot about communication throughout the call, and being able to communicate with them and help them through the leasing process. I mean, think about how overwhelming it is just to go to school in a new state when you're a US-based student. Well, think about if you're an international student coming from India and you're going to school in the United States. Now you're dealing with a whole, another country and, everything that goes into it. So we really help with that process and making sure that you get to an actual signed lease, because we all have a vested interest in it. So, I think that's important. And, kind of tying back to the move out process in international students and kind of giving a few tips there is, it's really important that we communicate with them, that they understand their full lease term, and that it's, 12 months and it's not a 10-month lease, and that they own their rent for the remaining 2 months. And a lot of times it's just a communication gap there, because if you think about an international student, again, going to school, they pay a lot of money, to be in another country, to go to school for a year, and they really don't want to, they're here for a reason, and they don't want to violate the rules of their lease. So if we just properly communicate to them what that is, you're a lot less likely to have those early move outs, or without, getting your remaining months of lease payments that are due to you. So, it's just something to think about, that using a little extra care on the communication side when you are dealing with your communication. With your international students.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing with move outs with international students, because a lot of them will end up, leaving early over the summer, even as early as the springtime, right? And they're not planning to walk out on their financial obligations. Some do, and
Right. We won't excuse them all.
Yeah. But for the most part, I would say they end up, for those that do move out early, they do end up keeping up with their financial obligations. And, I think like you said, over communicating that, I would say at this point in time of the year, it's probably a little late, but remember that for next year, having those conversations, knowing, and I'm sure we're probably getting into a little bit of fair housing here of, identifying which ones are international students. Race is obviously a big thing, but being a student from another country, I don't think there's any reason you can't, identify someone, within a rent roll as being an international student. Would love for, a fair housing attorney to come on the show and tell me otherwise. Because that's a very healthy discussion that I think this industry needs to have. But being able to identify those residents and communicate with them in advance of, hey, whatever your plans are, just be aware that these are your financial obligations, and kind of work with them to make sure that they leave on a great note, so that they're not frustrated by something. Because when you turn them over to Steve, because they've left unpaid rent or unpaid damages, Steve's going to have a really hard time chasing that person down if they don't have a Social Security number or some type of tax identification within the U.S.
Correct.
Well, anything else again and this is really, kind of about, I'm glad we talked about ending the lease process with current international students or residents that you have. But then on top of that, going back to that question, as far as this being the time to get in front of them, I know that, and if I'm, taking something out of what you wanted to talk about, JoAnn, let me know. But, I've seen a lot of folks that will go as far as, working with the international department to set up bus service to the airports to pick these folks up. And that's, that's needed because, one, the university isn't always able to do that. I would definitely say make sure that you've got everything worked out with your insurance in order to do that. But, being able to go and pick up students so that they've got transportation back to the university. Because in a lot of situations with these university towns, they may be 2 hours from an airport, and, landing in the U.S. and then having to take a 2-hour Uber ride with someone nothing about could be a little scary. So, having, working with the international department to, provide that service, I think is a great way of not only helping out your university and those students, but also to begin getting your brand in front of those folks. Any other things like that you would recommend as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really great point. And there are even, concierge services out there that help with that aspect of it as well. In terms of Unilodgers, if there's anything like that that we can help with in explaining in the, actual leasing process. And, when you work with Unilodgers, we're with you until the end of the move out process. So we can always go back and communicate with that resident on your behalf. So if there's something that you want to communicate that you forgot, or maybe that's an important point, let us know, and use all your resources again out there to get that communication, because there is nothing worse than, landing in a new place and finding out that, you're 2 hours away from where you had to go, or there was something that you needed to have in order to move in, like renter's insurance, before you could actually move in, and finding out when you arrive at the property, because that could be really overwhelming. And so we want to head all of those off at the pass, not just for your international students, but all of your students, really, and making sure that they know every part of what's gonna be coming at them when they get there.
Great. Well, guys, thanks so much for taking the time out to be a part of this and passing on, sharing some of this information with our listeners. A lot of times, we know these things as operators and just need to be reminded of them as we go into the season. But for a lot of the audience, this is their first time being in a management position during move out, and, are looking to this podcast to give them direction. And I know I know those listeners specifically are very grateful for you guys taking the time to do this. So thanks again. Any other parting thoughts?
No, thanks for having us all.
Well, great, guys. I appreciate it, and we'll talk to you soon. Well, there you have it, guys. It was it was a lot of fun doing that. Outside of, there's a lot of technical issues that you may kind of hear in that recording that we had along the way. It's tough having 5 people on a recorded line and trying to make everything perfect. But again, I hope this serves well for everybody as a reminder. That was the main reason I wanted to do this, just because, hopefully your company is doing these things. But I know for me, having someone to sit down with and kind of going through, okay, what did we learn last year? And, if we got everything really tightened up, and just having someone reminding you of those things, I think is huge. So yeah, hopefully everybody got something out of that. And if you're new to student housing, new to a management position, maybe this was news to you. Hopefully you got even more out of it. So good luck to everybody. I mean, there's going to be some other podcasts that are going to be coming out during turn and all that. But, I wanted to just say good luck to everybody that's about to go through that, and we'll see you on the other side. Obviously, make sure that listen, if you come across any problems during turn and you just kind of need someone to bounce an idea off of, feel free to email us at contact@studenthousinginsight.com. I can't say that I'm going to be terribly quick to respond on it, but would love to hear any kind of issues that you're coming across, and obviously want you to work with internally with your own company to make sure you're clear on everything that you're supposed to be doing. But would at the same time love to hear from you and see if there's something that we can collaborate on to make sure that you've got a very, very smooth move in. But once move in is over with, it's time to start thinking about attending one of our summits. We've got 2 that are coming up right after everyone is finished with move in. We've got first one coming up September 10th in Waco, Texas. Our summits are turning into 2-day events now. There's been a workshop component and a presentation component, more of a conference type feel to the presentation part of it. We're separating that out. The workshops are getting much more in depth, which is great. I love having that, and it's really helping us evolve some of the things that we're doing with our market analysis module. So that is now being done on the second day. It's completely optional. Trust us. If you feel like you don't need any help on creating a market analysis for your market, don't come. It's not something that you've got to come to. But if you know that you're struggling in your market, you want to get a better idea of what's going on, and more than anything, you just want to be able to understand the process of going through a market analysis and being able to explain what's going on in your market to your investors and to your supervisors. This is a fantastic course to go through in order to achieve that. So, but at the same time, there's a lot of folks that love coming to the summits just because of the networking and the inspiration that they get from a lot of the topics that we're discussing. That's all going to be in day 1. And it also allows us to start at 10 o'clock instead of 9 o'clock in the morning, which is great when you're talking about a regional summit and everybody's driving. But this one coming up in Waco, Texas, is going to be a lot of fun because not only are we're kind of in between Austin and Dallas, where a lot of the attendees live. Also, it's home to Baylor, so we've got several local communities there that they're going to be able to attend. And Baylor's just a great campus if you've never seen it. And then you've got Chip and Joanna and all the beauty they've built in Waco. So part of the activities that we're doing is Waco tours, which takes everybody around to a lot of the sightseeing activities in Waco, but also get to check out a lot of the homes from the Fixer Upper series. So that's really cool.
I've said it a million times. I'm going to keep saying it. I think that Waco is going to be my favorite. I'm very, very excited about it. And you already said it, for everybody who loves HGTV, everybody who loves Fixer Uppers, #shiplap, baby. All right. So this is the one to be at for sure.
Yeah, and so that event is really geared towards markets in Texas and Oklahoma. But as we've said before, if you're not in those markets and you still just want to attend because you want to get the content out of it, feel free to come along. We had someone register yesterday from California. So, excited about that. Don't feel like you have to be from those markets. Even if you're from a market outside of those two states and you want to go to the market analysis, let us know what market you're coming from, and we'll be able to pull up that report for your market as well. And then coming up on October 1st and 2nd, we have the Southeast, which was where we started last year. That's going to be at the National Whitewater Center in Charlotte, North Carolina. So if you're in Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, and Eastern Tennessee, and by Eastern Tennessee, I mean anything Nashville and East, you want to make sure that you get to that event, because it's going to be really big.
Well, I was going to say, and just to go off of the Charlotte one, that place is amazing. When you get there, even if you picture it in your head what a whitewater rafting place should look like, that place was an adult Chuck E. Cheese, if you will. And I promise if I go this time, I'm definitely going to do some more daring stuff. I wasn't quite dressed the part last time is the excuse I'm going with right now. But
I like it.
I might get in that water. I'm going to zip line. I'm going to jump. I'm going to try to knock out as much stuff as I can back that way again, because I definitely had some envy of the people who were getting some amazing Instagram
exactly.
pictures and videos out there.
Instant jealous.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that, because I mean, all of our locations have been very Instagram worthy. I mean, between Kennedy Space Center with Cincinnati Zoo, Waco is going to be pretty phenomenal, and I know I didn't really understand how cool Waco was until I've had a couple of trips there over the past 10 months or so. And it's got just a really cool vibe about it, and I think everybody's going to love it.
Well, yeah, JoAnn decorated
pretty much. And then
never underestimate the power of JoAnn Games.
Yeah, and that's and this is part of what we wanted this series of summits to be. We wanted it not to just be something that everybody's crowded into a hotel lobby. We want it to be something where first of all, if you come dressed in a tie, you're going to be laughed out.
You're going to be out of place.
So again, if you've got any interest in being at one of those, make sure that you check us out at studenthousinginsight.com and just click on the events tab. And then, of course, as Greta alluded to earlier, if you're listening to this and you're in student housing and you haven't become part of the Student Housing Insight community, or what we refer to as the SHI community, make sure that you're registering for that. You just go to the website, look in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see a login, click on that, then just click sign up, and it'll take you through the process. But we've got a great forum there that anything student housing is being discussed. Some things that aren't student housing are being discussed, but it's a lot of fun. And then this is also a great place for job posting as well. We've got a job posting section that you're able to select within our forum. And we've got I think like this week we've had like 3 or 4
We've
postings
had
just
so
on
many
jobs.
job postings this week.
Yeah. And so regardless if you're looking for someone with student housing experience, or if you're looking for a position within the industry, this is a fantastic place to be doing that. So go join today. Hey guys, thanks so much. I really enjoyed this conversation. And the laughing that everybody is hearing, it's in relationship to other things that have been edited out. So anyway, But guys, thanks so much again, everybody. Good luck with Turn, and we'll talk to you soon.
Finish strong.